Hello friends, and welcome to tonight's edition of Sleep Story. If you have not done so yet, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel, so you will be notified when a new sleep story is ready for you. I want to thank all the supporters of this channel. You truly make these narrations possible. If you wish to become a supporter, you can do so by exploring channel membership or by joining our community on Patreon. I thank you all. In order to get into a relaxed state of mind, tonight I will take you on a journey on a historic train, where you have a ticket for a private sleeping compartment. If you would like to skip this relaxation exercise, you can jump to the stories with the timestamp in the description. And now, it is time to unwind. Settle into a comfortable position in your bed. Close your eyes and take a deep, slow breath in. Let's embark on a soothing journey aboard an old-fashioned night train, where you will unwind in a cozy sleeper car compartment, lulled to sleep by the gentle motion of the train. Imagine yourself standing on a quiet platform at a historic train station. The air is cool and crisp, filled with the scent of fresh rain and distant pine trees. Ahead of you, a magnificent old train waits, its dark green and gold carriages gleaming in the soft glow of the station light. You take a step toward the train, feeling the excitement and anticipation of a night journey. The conductor greets you with a friendly nod, and you step up into the train, hearing the faint creak of the wooden steps beneath your feet. The door closes softly behind you, and you find yourself in a narrow, warmly lit corridor, lined with rich mahogany paneling and brass fixtures. You walk down the corridor as the train begins its journey. As you walk, you notice the quiet ambience of the train, with plush carpeting underfoot and soft lamplight reflecting off the polished wood. Each compartment door you pass is adorned with ornate brass handles, and you can hear the faint murmur of other passengers settling in for the night. The soft, rhythmic clatter of the train on the tracks beginning to fill your ears. The train gently sways from side to side, a soothing motion that already starts to relax you. You reach your compartment and slide open the door. Inside, the space is cozy and inviting, with warm wood tones, soft light, and a comfortable bed made up with crisp white linens and a thick woolen blanket. The bed is tucked against one wall. There is a large window that allows you to see the landscape outside moving by. Step inside the compartment and close the door behind you, feeling the privacy and peace of your own little sanctuary on the train. The compartment is small but perfectly appointed. There's a small nightstand beside the bed with a vintage brass lamp casting a soft golden glow. There is a plush, comfortable seat opposite the bed, perfect for relaxing or reading a book. The gentle motion of the train continues, a constant reassuring rhythm that lulls you into deeper relaxation. Take a seat on the bed and turn your attention to the window. Outside, the landscape glides by. The sun has set, and the land is bathed in the soft light of the moon. You can see tall trees, silhouetted against the night sky, their branches gently swaying in the wind. Occasionally, the train passes through small villages, their lights twinkling like stars in the distance. The world outside is peaceful and quiet, the perfect backdrop for your journey into restful sleep. Take a deep breath in, inhaling the fresh, cool air of the compartment. Hold it for a moment, then slowly exhale, letting go of any tension. Focus on the sensation of the air filling your lungs and the feeling of relaxation as you breathe out. With each breath, imagine the tranquility of the night train and the gentle sway of the carriage filling you. As your glances wander around the room, you notice the details of the compartment. Notice the rich texture of the wooden paneling, the softness of the bed linens, and the subtle, comforting glow of the lamp. The sound of the train on the tracks is steady and rhythmic, like a lullaby, carrying you deeper into relaxation. Feel a sense of connection with this peaceful journey. Imagine the gentle motion of the train rocking you, the soft sounds of the train as it moves through the night, and the quiet ambience of your private compartment, filling you with a profound sense of peace and comfort. Lie down in your bed and pull the thick, warm blanket over you. Feel the softness of the pillow beneath your head and the gentle sway of the train. Close your eyes and listen. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the tracks and the occasional soft whistle in the distance. As you continue your mindful breathing, allow yourself to sink deeper into relaxation, feeling your body grow heavier and your mind quieter. Your day has come to an end. There's nothing else you have to do today. You can surrender to the peaceful embrace of sleep, knowing that you are in a place of pure tranquility, safe and serene in your cozy train compartment. The Story of an Invitation. Bertha Sutherland hurried home from the post office and climbed the stairs of her boarding house to her room on the 3rd floor. Her roommate, Grace Maxwell, was sitting on the divan by the window, looking out into the twilight. A year ago, Bertha and Grace had gone to Dartmouth to attend the academy and found themselves roommates. Bertha was bright, pretty, and popular, the favorite of her classmates and teachers. Grace was a grave, quiet girl, dressed in mourning. She was quite alone in the world, the aunt who had brought her up having recently died. At first she had felt shy with bright and brilliant Bertha. But soon they became friends, and the year that followed was a very pleasant one. It was almost ended now, for the terminal exams had begun, and in a week's time the school would close for the holidays. "Have some chocolates, Grace," said Bertha gaily. "I got such good news in my letter tonight that I felt I must celebrate it fittingly. So I went into Carter's and invested all my spare cash in caramels. It's really fortunate the term is almost out, for I'm nearly bankrupt. I have just enough left to furnish a tuck-out for commencement night and no more." "What is your good news, may I ask?" said Grace. "You know I have an Aunt Margaret, commonly called Aunt Meg, out at Riversdale, don't you? There never was such a dear, sweet, jolly auntie in the world. I had a letter from her tonight. Listen, I'll read you what she says. "I want you to spend your holidays with me, my dear. Mary Fairweather and Louis Fish and Lily Dennis are coming too, so there's just room for one more. And that one must be yourself. Come to Riversdale when school closes, and I'll feed you on strawberries and cream and pound cake and donuts and mince pies and all the delicious, indigestible things that schoolgirls love and careful mothers condemn. Mary and Lou and Lil are girls after your own heart, I know, and you shall all do just as you like, and we'll have picnics and parties and merry doings galore." "There," said Bertha, looking up with a laugh. "Isn't that lovely?" "How delightful it must be to have friends like that to love you and plan for you," said Grace wistfully. "I am sure you will have a pleasant vacation, Bertie. As for me, I am going to Clogsman's bookstore until school reopens. I saw Mr. Clogman today, and he agreed to take me." Bertha looked surprised. She had not known what Grace's vacation plans were. "I don't think you ought to do that, Grace," she said thoughtfully. "You are not strong, and you need a good rest. It will be awfully trying to work at Clogman's all summer." "There is nothing else for me to do," said Grace, trying to speak cheerfully. "You know, I'm as poor as the proverbial church mouse, Bertie, and the simple truth is that I can't afford to pay my board all summer and get my winter outfit unless I do something to earn it. I shall be too busy to be lonesome, and I shall expect long, newsy letters from you, telling me all your fun, passing your vacation on to me at second hand, you see. Well, I must set to work at those algebra problems. I tried them before dark, but I couldn't solve them. My head ached, and I felt so stupid. How glad I shall be when the exams are over. I suppose I must revisit that senior English this evening, said Bertha absently, but she made no move to do so. She was studying her friend's face. How very pale and thin Grace looked. Surely much paler and thinner than when she had come to the academy, and she had not, by any means, been plump and rosy then. I believe she could not stand 2 months at Clogman's, thought Bertha. If I were not going to Aunt Meg's, I would ask her to go home with me, or even if Aunt Meg had room for another guest, I'd just write her all about Grace and ask if I could bring her with me. Aunt Meg would understand. She always understands. But she hasn't, so it can't be. Just then, a thought darted into Bertha's brain. What nonsense, she said aloud, so suddenly and forcibly that Grace fairly jumped. What is? Oh, nothing much, said Bertha, getting up briskly. See here, I'm going to get to work. I've wasted enough time. She curled herself up on the divan and tried to study her senior English. But the thoughts wandered hopelessly, and finally she gave it up in despair and went to bed. There she could not sleep. She lay awake and wrestled with herself. It was after midnight when she sat up in bed and said solemnly, "I will do it." Next day, Bertha wrote a confidential letter to Aunt Meg. She thanked her for her invitation and then told her all about Grace. "And what I want to ask, Aunt Meg, is that you will let me transfer my invitation to Grace and ask her to go to Riversdale this summer in my place. Don't think me ungrateful. No, I'm sure you won't. You always understand things. But you can't have us both, and I'd rather Grace should go. It will do her so much good, and I have a lovely home of my own to go to, and she has none." Aunt Meg understood, as usual, and was perfectly willing. So she wrote to Bertha and enclosed a note of invitation for Grace. "I shall have to manage this affair very carefully," reflected Bertha. "Grace must never suspect that I did it on purpose. I will tell her that circumstances have prevented me from accepting Aunt Meg's invitation. That is true enough. No need to say that the circumstances are hers, not mine. And I'll say I just asked Aunt Meg to invite her in my place, and that she has done so." When Grace came home from her history examination that day, Bertha told her story and gave her Aunt Meg's cordial note. "You must come to me in Bertha's place," wrote the letter. "I feel as if I knew you from her letters, and I will consider you as a sort of honorary niece, and I'll treat you as if you were Bertha herself." "Isn't it splendid of Aunt Meg?" said Bertha diplomatically. "Of course you'll go, Gracie." "Oh, I don't know," said Grace in bewilderment. "Are you sure you don't want to go, Bertha?" "Indeed, I do want to go dreadfully," said Bertha frankly. "But as I've told you, it is impossible. But if I am disappointed, Aunt Meg mustn't be." "You must go, Grace, and that is all there is about it." In the end, Grace did go, a little puzzled and doubtful still, but thankful beyond words to escape the drudgery of the counter and the noise and heat of the city. Bertha went home, feeling a little bit blue in secret, it cannot be denied, but also feeling quite sure that if she had to do it all over again, she would do just the same. The summer slipped quickly by, and finally 2 letters came to Bertha, one from Aunt Meg and one from Grace. "I've had a lovely time," wrote the letter, "and oh, Bertie, what do you think? I am to stay here always. Oh, of course, I'm going back to school next month. But this is to be my home after this. Aunt Meg, she makes me call her that, says I must stay with her for good." In Aunt Meg's letter was this paragraph: "Grace is writing to you, and will have told you that I intend to keep her here. You know I have always wanted a daughter of my own, but my greedy brothers and sisters would never give me one of theirs. So I intend to adopt Grace. She is the sweetest girl in the world, and I am very grateful to you for sending her here. You will not know her when you see her. She has grown plump and rosy." Bertha folded her letters up with a smile. "I have a vague, delightful feeling that I am a good angel in a storybook," she said. The Touch of Fate. Mrs. Major Hill was in her element. This did not often happen, for in the remote prairie town of the Canadian Northwest, where her husband was stationed, there were few opportunities for matchmaking, and Mrs. Hill was, or believed herself to be, a born matchmaker. Major Hill was in command of the detachment of Northwest Mounted Police at Dufferin Bluff. Mrs. Hill was wont to declare that it was the most forsaken place to be found in Canada or out of it. But she did her very best to brighten it up, and it is only fair to say that the NWMP, officers and men, seconded her efforts. When Violet Thayer came west to pay a long-promised visit to her old schoolfellow, Mrs. Hill's cup of happiness bubbled over. In her secret soul, she vowed that Violet should never go back east unless it were post-haste to prepare a wedding trousseau. There was at least half a dozen eligibles among the MPs, and Mrs. Hill, after some reflection, settled on Ned Madison as the flower of the flock. He and Violet are simply made for each other, she told Major Hill the evening before Miss Thayer's arrival. He has enough money, and he is handsome and fascinating. And Violet is a beauty, and a clever woman into the bargain. They can't help falling in love, I am sure. It's fate. Perhaps Miss Thayer may be booked elsewhere already, suggested Major Hill. He had seen more than one of his wife's card castles fall into heartbreaking ruin. Oh no, Violet would have told me if that were the case. It's really quite time for her to think of settling down. She is 25, you know. The men all go crazy over her, but she's dreadfully hard to please. However, she can't help liking Ned. He hasn't a single fault. I firmly believe it is foreordained. And in this belief, Mrs. Hill rested securely, but nevertheless did not fail to concoct several feminine artifices for the helping of the foreordained. It was a working belief with her that it was always well to have the gods in your debt. Violet Thayer came, saw, and conquered. Within 36 hours of her arrival at Dufferin Bluff, she had every one of the half-dozen eligibles at her feet, not to mention a score or more ineligibles. She would have been surprised indeed had it been otherwise. Miss Thayer knew her power, and was somewhat unduly fond of exercising it, but she was a very nice girl into the bargain, and so thought one and all of the young men who frequented Mrs. Hill's drawing-room, and counted it richly worthwhile merely to look at Miss Thayer. Madison was foremost in the field. Of course, Madison was really a nice fellow, and quite deserved all Mrs. Hill's encomiums. He was good-looking and well-groomed, could sing and dance divinely, and played the violin to perfection. The other MPs were all jealous of him, and more so than ever when Violet Thayer came. They did not consider that any of them had the ghost of a chance if Madison entered the list against them. Violet liked Madison, and was very chummy with him after her own fashion. She thought all the MPs were nice boys, and they amused her, for which she was grateful. She had expected Dufferin Bluff to be very dull, and doubtless it would pall after a time. But for a change, it was delightful. The 6th evening after her arrival found Mrs. Hill's room crowded, as usual, with MPs. Violet was looking her best in a distracting new gown. Sergeant Fox afterwards described it to a brother officer as a stunning sort of rig between a cream and a blue and a brown. She flirted impartially with all the members of her circle at first, but gradually narrowed down to Ned Madison, much to the delight of Mrs. Hill, who was hovering around like a small, brilliant butterfly. Violet was talking to Madison and watching John Spencer out of the tail of her eye. Spencer was not an MP. He had some government post at Dufferin Bluff, and this was his first call at Lone Poplar Villa since Miss Thayer's arrival. He did not seem to be dazzled by her at all, and after her introduction had promptly retired to a corner with Major Hill, where they talked the whole evening about the trouble on the Indian reservation at Loon Lake. Possibly this indifference piqued Miss Thayer. Possibly she considered it refreshing after the servile adulation of the MPs. At any rate, when all the latter were gathered about the piano, singing a chorus with gusto, she shook Madison off and went over to the corner where Spencer, deserted by the Major, whose bass was wanted, was sitting in solitary state. He looked up indifferently as Violet shimmered down on the divan beside him. Sergeant Robinson, who was watching them jealously from the corner beyond the palms, and would have given his eyes, or at least one of them, for such a favor, mentally vowed that Spencer was the dullest fellow he had ever put those useful members on. "Don't you sing, Mr. Spencer?" asked Violet by the way of beginning a conversation, as she turned her splendid eyes full upon him. Robinson would have lost his head under them, but Spencer kept his heroically. "No," was his calmly brave reply, given without any bluntness, but with no evident intention of saying anything more. In spite of her social experience, Violet was disconcerted. "If he doesn't want to talk to me, I won't try to make him," she thought crossly. No man had ever snubbed her so before. Spencer listened immovably to the music for a time. Then he turned to his companion with a palpable effort to be civilly sociable. "How do you like the West, Miss Thayer?" he said. Violet smiled, the smile most men found dangerous. "Very much, so far as I have seen it. There is a flavor about the life here that I like, but I dare say it would soon pall. It must be horribly lonesome here most of the time, especially in winter." "The MPs are always growling that it is," returned Spencer with a slight smile. "For my own part, I never find it so." Violet decided that his smile was very becoming to him, and that she liked the way his dark hair grew over his forehead. "I don't think I've seen you at Lone Poplar Villa before," she said. "No, I haven't been here for some time. I came up tonight to see the Major about the Loon Lake trouble." "Otherwise you wouldn't have come," thought Violet. "Flattering, very." Aloud she said, "Is it serious?" "Oh no, a mere squabble among the Indians." "Have you ever visited the reservation, Miss Thayer? No? Well, you should get some of your MP friends to take you out. It would be worthwhile." "Why don't you ask me to go yourself?" said Violet audaciously. Spencer smiled again. "Have I failed in politeness by not doing so? I fear you would find me an insufferable dull companion." So he was not going to ask her after all. Violet felt piqued. She was also conscious of a sensation very near kin to disappointment. She looked across at Madison. How trim and dapper he was. "I hate a bandbox man," she said to herself. Spencer, meanwhile, had picked up one of Mrs. Hill's novels from the stand beside him. "Fools of Habit," he said, glancing at the cover. "I see it is making quite a sensation down east. I suppose you've read it." "Yes, it is very frivolous and clever. All froth, but delightful froth. Did you like it?" Spencer balanced the novel reflectively on his slender brown hand. "Well, yes, rather, but I don't care for novels as a rule. I don't understand them. The hero of this book, now, do you believe that a man in love would act as he did?" "I don't know," said Violet amusedly. "You ought to be a better judge than I. You are a man. I have never loved anybody, so I am in no position to decide, said Spencer. There was a little self-consciousness in his voice, as if he were telling her a fact concerning the Loon Lake trouble. Violet rose to the occasion. You have an interesting experience to look forward to, she said. Spencer turned his deep-set grey eyes squarely upon her. I don't know that. When I said I had never loved, I meant more than the love of a man for some particular woman. I meant love in every sense. I do not know what it is to have an affection for any human being. My parents died before I can remember. My only living relative was a penurious old uncle, who brought me up for shame's sake, and kicked me out on the world as soon as he could. I don't make friends easily. I have a few acquaintances whom I like, but there is no soul on earth for whom I care, or who cares for me. What a revelation love will be for you when it comes, said Violet softly. Again he looked into her eyes. Do you think it will come? He asked. Before she could reply, Mrs. Hill pounced upon them. Violet was wanted to sing. Mr. Spencer would excuse her, wouldn't he? Mr. Spencer did so obligingly. Moreover, he got up and bade his hostess good night. Violet gave him her hand. You will call again, she said. Spencer looked across at Madison. Perhaps it was accidental. I think not, he said. If, as you say, love will come some time, it would be a very unpleasant revelation if it came in hopeless guise, and one never knows what may happen. Miss Thayer was conscious of a distinct fluttering of her heart as she went across to the piano. This was a new sensation for her, and worthy of being analyzed. After the MPs had gone, she asked Mrs. Hill who Mr. Spencer was. Oh, John Spencer, said Mrs. Hill carelessly. He's at the head of the land office here. That's really all I know about him. Jack says he is a downright good fellow and all that, you know. But he's no earthly good in any social way. He can't talk or he won't. He's flat, so different from Mr. Madison, isn't he? Very, said Violet empathetically. After Mrs. Hill had gone out, Violet walked to the nearest mirror and looked at herself with the forefinger in the dimple of her chin. This is very odd, she said. She did not mean the dimple. Spencer had told her he was not coming back. She did not believe this, but she did not expect him for a few days. Consequently, when he appeared the very next evening, she was surprised. Madison, to whom she was talking when Spencer entered, does not know to this day what she had started to say to him, for she never finished her sentence. I wonder if it is the Loon Lake affair again, she thought nervously. Mrs. Hill came up at this point and whisked Madison off for a waltz. Spencer, seeing his chance, came straight across the room to her. Sergeant Robinson, who was watching them as usual, is willing to make affidavit that Miss Thayer changed color. After his greeting, Spencer said nothing. He sat beside her, and they watched Mrs. Hill and Madison dancing. Violet wondered why she did not feel bored. When she saw Madison coming back to her, she was conscious of an unreasonable anger with him. She got up abruptly. Let us go out on the veranda, she said imperiously. It is absolutely stifling in here. They went out. It was very cool and dusky. The lights of the town twinkled out below them, and the prairie's bluffs behind them were dark and sibilant. I am going to drive over to Loon Lake tomorrow afternoon to look into affairs there, said Spencer. Will you go with me? Violet reflected a moment. You didn't ask me, as if you really wanted me to go, she said. Spencer put his hand over the white fingers that rested on the railing. He bent forward until his breath stirred the tendrils of hair on her forehead. Yes, I do, she said distinctly. I want you to go with me to Loon Lake tomorrow, more than I ever wanted anything in my life before. Later on, when everybody had gone, Violet had a bad quarter of an hour with Mrs. Hill. That lady felt herself aggrieved. I think you treated poor Ned very badly tonight, Vi. He felt really blue over it, and it was awfully bad form to go out with Spencer, as you did, and stay there so long. And you oughtn't to flirt with him. He doesn't understand the game. I'm not going to flirt with him, said Miss Thayer calmly. Oh, I suppose it's just your way. Only don't turn the poor fellow's head. By the way, Ned is coming up with his camera tomorrow afternoon to take us all. I'm afraid he won't find me at home, said Violet sweetly. I'm going out to Loon Lake with Mr. Spencer. Mrs. Hill flounced off the bed in a pet. She was disgusted with everything. She declared to the Major. Things had been going so nicely, and now they were all muddled. Isn't Madison coming up to time? Queried the Major sleepily. Madison? It's Violet. She's behaving abominably. She treated poor Ned shamefully tonight. You saw yourself how she acted with Spencer, and she's going to Loon Lake with him tomorrow, she says. I'm sure I don't know what she can see in him. He's the dullest, pokiest fellow alive. So different from her in every way. Perhaps that is why she likes him, suggested the Major. The attraction of opposites and all that, you know? What Mrs. Hill crossly told him he didn't know anything about it. So, being a wise man, he held his tongue. During the next 2 weeks, Mrs. Hill was the most dissatisfied woman in the 4 districts, and every MP, down to the rawest recruit, anathemized Spencer in secret 12 times a day. Violet simply dropped everyone else, including Madison, in the coolest, most unmistakable way. One night, Spencer did not come to Loon Poplar Villa. Violet looked for him to the last. When she realized that he was not coming, she went to the veranda to have it out with herself. As she sat huddled up in a dim corner beneath a silkily rustling western maple, 2 MPs came out and, not seeing her, went on with their conversation. Heard about Spencer? Questioned one. No, what of him? Well, they say Miss Thayer's thrown him over. Yesterday I was passing her about 4 in the afternoon, and I saw Spencer coming in. I went down to the land office and was chatting to Cribson when the door opened about half an hour later, and Spencer burst in. He was pale as the dead, and looking wild. Has Faishi gone to Rainy River about those crown lands yet? He jerked out. Cribson said no. Then tell him he needn't. I'm going myself, said Spencer, and out he bolted. He posted off to Rainy River today, and won't be back for a fortnight. She'll be gone then. Rather rough on Spencer. After the way she encouraged him, returned the other as they passed out of earshot. Violet got up. All the callers were gone, and she swept into Mrs. Hill dramatically. Edith, she said in a cold, steady voice that, to those who knew her, meant breakers ahead for somebody. Mr. Spencer was here yesterday when I was riding with the Major, was he not? What did you tell him about me? Mrs. Hill looked at Violet's blazing eyes and wilted. I didn't tell him anything, much. What was it? Mrs. Hill began to sob. "Don't look at me like that, Violet. He just dropped in and we were talking about you. At least I was. And I heard that Harry St. Moore was paying you marked attention before and came west. And that some people thought you were engaged. And so... You told Mr. Spencer that I was engaged to Harry St. Moore." "No, I just hinted. I didn't mean any harm. I never dreamt you'd really care. I thought you were just amusing yourself, and so did everybody. And I wanted Ned Madison." Violet had turned very pale. "I love him," she said hoarsely. "And you've sent him away. He's gone to Rainy River. I shall never see him again." "Oh, yes, you will," gasped Mrs. Hill faintly. "He'll come back when he knows. You can write and tell him." "Do you suppose I'm going to write and ask him to come back?" said Violet wildly. "I've enough pride left yet to keep me from doing that for a man at whose head I've thrown myself openly. Yes, openly, and who has never, in words at least, told me he cared anything about me. I will never forgive you, Edith." Then Mrs. Hill found herself alone with her lacerated feelings. After soothing them with a good cry, she set to work thinking seriously. There was no doubt she had muddled things badly, but there was no use leaving them in a muddle when a word or two, fitly spoken, might set them straight. Mrs. Hill sat down and wrote a very diplomatic letter before she went to bed. And the next morning she waylaid Sergeant Fox and asked him if he would ride down to Rainy River with a very important message from Mr. Spencer. Sergeant Fox wondered what it could be, but it was none of his reason why. It was his only to mount and ride with all due speed, for Mrs. Hill's whims and wishes were as stringent and binding as the rules of the force. That evening, when Mrs. Hill and Violet, the latter very silent and regal, were sitting on the veranda, a horseman came galloping up the Rainy River trail. Mrs. Hill excused herself and went in. 5 minutes later, John Spencer, covered with the alkali dust of his 20 miles ride, dismounted at Violet's side. The MPs gave a concert at the barracks that night, and Mrs. Hill and her major went to it, as well as everyone else of any importance in town, except Violet and Spencer. They sat on Major Hill's veranda and watched the moon rising over the bluffs and making milk-white reflections in the prairie lakes. "It seems a year of misery since last night," sighed Violet happily. "You couldn't have been quite as miserable as I was," said Spencer earnestly. "You were everything, absolutely everything to me. Other men have little rills and driblets of affection for sisters and cousins and aunts. But everything in me went out to you. Do you remember you told me the first time we met that love would be a revelation to me? It has been more. It has been a new gospel. I hardly dared hope you could care for me. Even yet, I don't know why you do." "I love you," said Violet gravely, "because you are you." "Than which, of course, there could be no better reason."